Hello everyone and welcome to the 61st episode of the Hardcore Human Design Podcast. If you're watching, you can maybe see it, but it's just Luke and I again today. Celestina is not here. She's going to join us again next week. But for now, we're going to be talking about where you should live. I am currently, once again, about to move. And I thought this would be the perfect topic to talk about. Because it's a question on a lot of people's minds. Where is my ideal living environment? And there are actually a few ways to go about it. So we're going to look at two of those ways, one of them intensely. So human design, of course, we're going to look at that in depth or more in depth. But I also want to mention the option of astrocartography. According to Ra Uruhu, astrocartography should actually be calculated by using your design date. So there is your birth date, your birth time, and your birthplace. But there is also a design time, place, and date. And that happens approximately 88 days before your actual birthday. That is when the design side of the human design body graph is being developed. And that is in theory already the day that you could have been born because your body is fully developed. But apart from that, his theory behind this is that when your body is in the right place, in the right environment, then it thrives. So that is why he recommends using the design birth date. That's the one that you should use to calculate it. There are many professionals out there that offer this service. I would love to hear your insights on this if you've tried doing this calculation with your design date or with your birth date and what resonates with you more. It could, however, be that if you're still very conditioned in what you believe you should resonate more, that you would actually resonate more with the personality, so your actual birth date information and cartography. There are some pages where you can get this done for free, but I think for this, a professional astrocartography reader would be fantastic. So I would recommend just giving it a try, and maybe you find an astrocartographer who's open to testing both of these options out, and maybe you are an astrocartographer and would just like to give this a try. So the way that you find out your design birth time and date is in professional human design websites or softwares. We can see this design date. It will vary. It won't be, sometimes it's not even on the same day as you were born, 3 months previously to that day. It could be a different day. It could be a different time. It's definitely a different month. Just test it out and see. I am not aware of which softwares offer this information without it being a professional software, but maybe there are such things out there. So as you know, the ones that, or maybe I didn't mention it enough on here, but the ones that we most often refer to are mybodygraph.com, Jovian Archive, or Neutrino Design. The last one is an app. The other two are websites where you can find out your body graph and potentially also the design date and time. So the way that we're going to go about the structure of today's episode is, if you are currently asking yourself, where should I live? Or if you've ever asked yourself that question before, where should I live? Or what is my ideal living environment? Then you came to the right place. Because in human design, you actually can find out quite a bit of information on this subject. The first part that I would look at when someone asks me this question is whether or not their G center is defined, undefined, or entirely open. Because this is going to play a huge part in how they choose where they want to live. If your G center, the square in the middle of the body graph, that looks a bit like a diamond, if that is defined, then you can potentially make decisions of moving somewhere, for example, without ever having been there. And this is something that I've done a lot in my life. I've moved to places without actually having physically been there. So if you have it defined, this could be an option for you. There are, however, other elements that are going to play a role in here. So we're also going to take a look at the environments. So we have different variables in human design that talk about different elements within us, and we have an environment variable that is going to tell us more about how you should live instead of where you should live. But there are also elements to the where in this. And that is connected to the design nodes. So when you're looking at your design aspects of your human design body graph, you will see that within the nodes, you will have colors and tones as well, of course, and bases, like in the other gates as well, or the other planets as well. But in this case, the nodes are going to tell you a lot about the environment that helps your body thrive and helps your body feel vital and energized. In human design, what is believed is that there is a certain way of going about how to work on yourself, how to decondition yourself. The first thing is, of course, becoming aware of human design, then becoming aware of your human design strategy, your inner authority, and applying these things. So human design really is about applying things, not just learning about it. And once you've figured out your strategy and your inner authority, work with that. We're going to talk about this as well regarding choosing your environment, of course, because that's a big part of how to choose your environment. The way that you enter into a relationship is the most important way of deciding whether it's the right or the wrong choice. And choosing your environment is also a type of relationship. So in human design, when you have your strategy down, you understand your inner authority, then it's recommended to also sleep in your own aura, because that is when you're going to really start to get a feel of who you truly are, how you work, how you make decisions. It's going to help you understand what is you, what is currently influencing you in your environment or also in the transits. So you really start to get a feel of your inner intuition, your inner way of navigating through life. And once you have figured that out, the next step is to work on your nutritional aspect. But that is only going to start coming out of you once you've really worked with the first 3 steps: strategy, authority, and sleeping in your own aura. It can be very frightening to hear that for the first time, that you should be sleeping in your own aura, especially if you are in a relationship. But it is truly very beneficial to do that, at least for a certain amount of time, to really experience what that feels like. So I have to agree with a lot of people that say it's important to be single for a while in your life, to really hone in on who you are, what you want, what you feel like. And in this case, that's just another step in the human design process that is recommended. There is no forcing anything on anyone. Again, with this, also listen to your strategy and listen to your inner authority. The next step, nutrition being an important part, is because you first start to work on your physical body. With opportunity, we also do it. We start to work on the physical body first, and with human design, we also do that. So the first part is nutrition in human design, because that is how your body receives the right kind of nourishment. So this is where it gains the energy and vitality from. We covered this in a previous episode, so do check that out if you haven't done so yet, where we talk about nutrition and the importance of that. And once you've come to grips with what you should be eating, or maybe even how you should be eating, you can start focusing on the environment aspect in your human design body graph. Even for the nutrition part, don't force yourself. If you first hear about the way that you should be eating or what you should be eating, then really let it sit with you and see if that resonates with you. Because there will always be the right time to take these steps, and they can't be forced. So even if you learn about your nutritional digestion type, and this goes beyond nutrition, honestly, it's everything that you take in as information, and food is information, but it's also how and what you take in as information from the series you watch or the books you read or the podcasts you listen to. So all of these things play a role, and forcing anything in this aspect is not going to be helpful. So listen to your strategy and inner authority to make these choices whenever you feel like it may be the right time to start dibbling your toes into the nutritional aspect. The next part, environment, is the same. So once you've built a foundation of your nutritional aspect, the interesting thing is that human design, when you start to learn about strategy and inner authority, the other things are going to start falling into place as well. So if you're really following through with strategy and your inner authority, you are going to naturally start eating according to your digestion variable. You're naturally going to want to move towards the environment that fits you. If you feel like the environment doesn't resonate with you, it may be because you still need to take a few steps back, work with strategy, work with inner authority, sleep in your own aura, and nutrition before you can really truly fluctuate towards the environment or feel drawn towards the right environment for you. And yeah, everything in your body graph starts to fall into place when you start with the foundation. That's very important to know. By building all of these foundational steps before the environment comes into play, your perspective is also going to change. And we will see as well that perspective is even going to play a part in the environment. So you can see that there are certain types of environment which can only provide you with a certain type of perspective. However, when you're looking at the variable element of perspective, that's still possible that you can have any of the 6 possible perspectives, actually 12, because there's going to be a left-facing arrow variable and a right-facing arrow variable. Of course, there's more to that, but today we're talking about the environment. So I'm going to wheel myself back and focus now on the G center. An open or undefined G center is extremely sensitive to the environment that surrounds them, of who or what surrounds them. That means that if you are surrounded by individuals that are very healthy, very active and sporty, then you have a tendency to also become more active, healthy, and more sports oriented. However, if you're surrounded by people who are addicted to drugs or live an unhealthy lifestyle, you have a tendency to be pulled towards that direction as well. So throughout this whole chapter, this whole podcast, well, episode at least, make sure that you really hone in on understanding your values. What is it that you want to align with in your future? What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? And make sure that wherever you're moving to, that this is given in your surroundings. So it could be people. If you are someone who is not into yoga yet, but you have an undefined or open G center, make sure that you move somewhere where there's a yoga community, for example, that can kind of take you along for the ride. Of course, you don't have to move or turn your whole life upside down just to live in that kind of environment. You can also just go to a yoga studio or start building your tribe around where you are. But just understand that having the right people around you is crucial for whatever it is that you want to become in life, because you're here as a chameleon. You can adapt. And it doesn't mean that this is going to be your identity for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean that this is going to be who you are for the rest of your life. It's, however, important to be very clear as to what it is you want, and that can shift, that can change. You can always redirect yourself. As an undefined or open G center, it's also important to understand that you are not here to participate actively in making these choices. The universe is going to guide you, and it's going to or life is just going to guide you, if you prefer that kind of phrasing. And it's a bit like imagining yourself being on a river, and the river has a strong stream. You're on a boat, and that boat doesn't have any paddles, so you can't row the boat. You're just on the boat, and the river is going to take you wherever the stream is going. Yes, what you can do is you can use your hands and try like crazy to paddle, or maybe even use your legs, whatever it may be, but that is not going to do you any good. It's just going to exhaust you, and it's most likely going to lead you down the wrong path. Instead, just trusting that the path you're being taken on is the right one, that would be a better choice of going about things. This is, of course, very difficult, and it also applies to the different type that you are, so we're going to be talking about that as well. But just be mindful with an undefined or open G center that these things are very important to you. So with a defined G center, it can be the case, as I mentioned at the beginning, that you simply choose a place and you feel drawn to it, and you've gone about it with the right strategy and inner authority, and then you go do it without having ever been there. That is a possibility. It doesn't mean that just because you have a defined G center, that is how you operate. It can still be different. It always depends on the rest of your design. But these are two things that are still important in how you choose your environment and what you should look out for. When it comes to the next part of this chapter, we're going to now take a look at the type. So the type is also going to play an important role, because this is how you make decisions. That is your strategy. We're not going to cover the inner authorities, but whatever I say regarding the type, keep your inner authority in mind. You need to use your inner authority to then make the right decisions. So I always like to say that if you are a projector and you're being invited into an event or into a situation or into doing something, it doesn't mean that you have to accept every single invitation. That's where your inner authority comes in. That's where you then have the choice to decide, yes, this is what I really want, or no, this is not what I want. So as a projector, yes, you do need to wait for the invitation to move somewhere. And this can be very hard to hear, but this is an ideal way of reducing the resistance, really being more in the flow of things, and having an easier time than to struggle to find an apartment, to struggle to find a way to bring your things there, to struggle maybe even in the environment once you've reached there. So wait for invitation. Once you have the invitation, listen to your inner authority. For reflectors, wait a lunar cycle. I know, it's tough, but that's how you should go about it when making major decisions, to really wait for at least one full lunar cycle and wait for that clarity to come in. For generators, wait for your sacral to respond. Wait for it to be triggered by something in your environment or by something you hear or see or something along those lines, and then respond to it. Again, listen to your inner authority to then make these decisions, whether they're really right for you or not. Maybe you need time if you're an emotional being to gain clarity. Maybe you're very quick with that spleen of yours, but it's still just a little voice in your head that said, hey, yeah, we should do that. And then your mind comes in and starts overriding it. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, understanding the inner authorities even, but I have faith in you. As a manifestor, inform before taking action. Yes, you can go and do your thing, but in order to reduce the resistance, inform the people that are going to be impacted by your choices. As a manifesting generator, you need to, in my personal opinion, I know, or Celestina and I agree on this, that a manifesting generator is a combination. Not everyone in the human design community agrees with this, but we keep saying a manifesting generator needs to wait for that sacral to respond and use their inner authority to figure out what it is they want to do, and then inform everyone that is going to be impacted by their decision. And I've seen this over and over and over again, how well that works for manifesting generators. So try it out. If it resonates with you, follow that. If it doesn't, follow the other human design advice out there to operate like a generator, basically. Okay, so the next part now, we're going to be talking about the environment. So the variable, the environment variable. When you're looking at the environment variable, you will see that the environments are separated into 6 different types. And these 6 different types are further divided into 2 each. So there is always going to be a left-facing arrow and a right-facing arrow, which is connected to the nodal tone. So you're going to have, if you really want to dive into the details here, you would be looking at the tonal element of the gate of this nodal configuration, but we are focusing on the color, which is the environment, and then the tone is going to tell you whether it's pointing left or right. So in this case, we have numbers 1 through 6, and I'm going from bottom to top, if you can see me, because the first line is the foundational line, and we're looking at a hexagram when we're looking at these color numbers as well. We're also looking at the hexagram when we're looking at lines and gates and things like that. But having this visualization of a hexagram of 6 lines that are stacked upon one another in the I Ching, this is where it comes from. It also shows us that we have an upper trigram, which is the top 3 lines, and we have a lower trigram, which is the lower 3 lines. And what that all means in connection to environment is that basically the lower 3 lines are going to be connected to hardscape, whereas the upper 3 lines are going to be connected to landscape. So hardscape includes caves, markets, and kitchens. So caves is the first line, markets is the second line, and kitchens is the third line. And it can get very confusing when I'm talking about the hexagram lines. I don't mean the lines of the gate. I'm talking about the lines of the hexagram. The environments are coming out of the colors of the nodal configurations. So the design side of the nodes, that's the environment. The hardscapes represent the foundation of civilization and urban living. And 1/3 of the population naturally resonates with these 3 environments. So what that means is that if you do have one of these 3 environments, caves, markets, or kitchens, you feel more drawn towards the urban lifestyle or the city lifestyle. The caves, however, are a bit of it could be this, it could be that. So you may not feel too drawn towards that. Kitchen and markets, however, do feel more drawn towards that kind of life. So there is this hustle and bustle. I mean, you can just understand it just by simply looking at the definitions, that markets are people that like to exchange, and just get all of the currency and the fruits and vegetables, like for example like this. You just have a trading battle maybe. And kitchens are really putting ingredients together and having all of this movement, and yes, heat also, or temperature also plays a role in kitchens. However, more in the sense of dry and wet instead of hot and cold. That is another kind of element, but temperature does play a role in kitchens as well. And then we have landscapes, which is mountains, line 4, valleys, line 5, and shores, line 6. So that's again showing you the hexagram. It's actually color. 1 is caves, markets, 2 kitchens, 3 mountains, 4 valleys, 5 shores, 6. If you really want to go into the nitty-gritty of this. But in most human design softwares, you will just find your environment and it will say one of those definitions. It's not going to tell you where the number is coming from and how you can identify these numbers. It's very easy these days. So landscapes represent different ways of experiencing and perceiving the world. And it's more connected to different perspectives and how to connect with others. Additionally to all of that, we also have a left and right tonal resonance. So each environment has tonal qualities. So the left facing arrow is more focused, more strategic, and tends to be observed by others, as mentioned before. The right facing arrow is more receptive, observing, and takes in a broader spectrum. And we will have different kinds of ways of explaining this when we're looking at the individual environments. So let's dive right in. Let's start with caves. Caves are, as a core need, they need security and protection. And if you feel like that doesn't resonate with you, just let me go on and see how that feels to you. What that means is that there is a certain sense of a desire for closure or enclosed spaces, and particularly from the back. So having this protective space that comes from behind you, that is important to you. And this kind of transfers to your workspace, to your home, to being in a restaurant even. So you prefer to be able to see the door instead of having your back towards the door. That would be very uncomfortable to you, to not be able to observe who's coming in and out of this space. And you're also very selective about who gets to enter your space. It's not that everyone can come in, every stranger, every Tom, Dick, and Harry. It's really a selective environment for you, and you prefer to have a bit more of a control over who comes in and out. So, examples of that could be a private office space where you can close your door. It can even be a car. So that would be kind of a mobile cave. And maybe you lock your doors in your car if it's not locking automatically. But this may be a way for you to feel safe, to feel a sense of security. And another thing you may prefer is to just have single entrance rooms or environments where you know, okay, this is the only entrance here. That's where people come in and out, and I have an eye on them. Caves don't like to be startled at all. So that is the reason. If you have your back facing the door, you have more of a chance to be startled about someone coming in. I would even assume that a cave would like to probably have windows next to the door so that you can already see people coming towards the door. But that's just an assumption. So let me know in the comments below if you feel, yeah, you would definitely like to have windows, or if you're fine with just having the door slam open every once in a while. I'm assuming you would prefer people knocking though, but who wouldn't? So when we're looking at the left-facing cave, it's called selective caves. And they are even more particular about who enters their space. So they're more selective than the blending caves, which is the right-facing caves. They're more comfortable with multiple people in their space, whereas a selective cave prefers to have fewer individuals in their cave and may even also be more selective about who gets to enter in the first place. When we're looking at markets, that is color 2, their core need is selections, options, and diversity. So they're really into being able to choose things for themselves. They are individuals who thrive in, for example, shopping centers or urban areas with diverse populations, or online platforms with many options. So where you really can see all of this choice, and then you can select what it is that feels right for you. So when it comes to your living environment, having a physical, actual market close by would be something that you would enjoy, where you can just go and select the fruits and vegetables that you enjoy. But also having a neighborhood that may be culturally more diverse, more varied, and where you have many different things that you can choose from. When it comes to the left tone, you are most likely more strategic in selection. You are more focused on specific things, and when it comes to the right tone, you take in broader range of options and are maybe more experimental in your choices and selections. The third color is kitchens. And the core needs for kitchens are transformation and creation. So this is one that I can talk about pretty well because I feel the need and desire for kitchen environments. I like when people come together and create together. I also like to hermit. I am a second line in my profile, so I do like to retrieve. But I also very much enjoy people coming together and creating things. One of my favorite things to watch and observe are musicians that each play a different instrument, and they never met before, but somehow they come together, merge, and create these beautiful art pieces. Kitchens thrive in places where things are changing, where things are being made and or things are being transformed, and that can be so varied. That can be a literal kitchen where you're taking many different ingredients and putting it together and creating something new, but it can also be a mechanics where you are having all of these different car parts and you're putting it together and creating a car. So you can see that environments are very diverse and very broad in a sense. So it's not really about where you should live, which country or which city even, but it's really giving you an idea of, okay, this is what fills me. This is what I need to feel like I'm thriving. And when you're living in the right type of environment, you're also receiving the right type of opportunities. You're meeting the right type of people. So things fall into place more easily and you're more healthy. So if you have a child that is sick, look at their environment and place them in a way that would resonate with their environment. So looking at your child's environment when they're sick, you can gain a little bit more insight into what is going to help them heal. And implementing these things can be very helpful. However, Ra does say that the environment only really starts to become important after your Saturn return. The interesting thing is that he does sometimes contradict himself in this. So sometimes he says it's important from the get-go. Other times he said that this is important after your Saturn return. But just play around with it and see how you feel about it, using your strategy and your inner authority. So then we also have a left tone in the kitchen, which is wet kitchens, and they need humidity, they need moisture, and they need fluidity. And for me, yes, I resonate with that so much. Being in a tropical forest, I love it. Then the right tone is dry kitchen, and they need dryness. And they also need very clear boundaries. So thriving for a dry kitchen would be in a dry environment. And when it comes to your child, for example, what you can do, or even for your own health, understanding that if you're using essential oils, you may want to inhale these fumes through using boiled water and inhaling the humidity. If you're a wet kitchen, that could be a great idea. But if you're a dry kitchen, may not be the best. So in that case, I would recommend just dribbling onto a tissue and inhaling the essential oil from the tissue instead of using humidity to inhale the essential oils. The mountain environment, that is color 4, and their core need is perspective. And interestingly as well, reduced oxygen. So yes, as a mountain person, you like to be higher up. You like to have a different kind of perspective as well, observing the world below you. And they tend to be more selective because if you're living on a mountain, there are far less people that are coming around than in a cave, for example, because people have to climb that mountain first. And that is where the reduced oxygen also comes in. Having a place higher up in the mountain is also going to reduce your oxygen flow. So depending on the rest of your design, a good idea may be, if you're doing breathing exercises, for example, and you're a mountain, is to focus more on the exhales instead of focusing on the inhales. So instead of taking in more oxygen, reducing the amount of oxygen that you take in. And also using different kinds of breathing exercises that would potentially restrict your breathing pattern more than open it up. When you're a left-facing mountain, you're an active mountain, so you are more engaged with the perspective. And when you're a right-facing passive mountain, you're more contemplative with the view. So that means that the active mountain is just going to be more active about engaging in the perspective, and the passive one feels like contemplating more, maybe sitting up there and just watching, but not needing to mingle into whatever is happening below at the foot of the mountain. Where we are now, valleys, the foot of the mountain. So this is where places of communication and movement are a thing for individuals. So that is very important. And I didn't mention this at the beginning, but with the mountains, we've now stepped into the landscape of things. So this is really more about nature elements. And so it's really about mountains being up, high up on a mountain. Yes, that's great. But if you're living in New York City, for example, being higher up in the skyscraper, that would be better for a mountain. The valleys, on the other hand, they prefer to be down, ground on the bottom of the mountain, as any valley. It's a valley prefers to be on the ground at the foot of the mountain. And in the valley, if you've ever been in a valley, you can hear that the sound sounds completely different than on a mountain. The way that something sounds, the way that your words sound or noises sound, whatever is happening around you, they sound different in the valley than they do in the mountain. And this is a big thing for valleys. Valleys are super sensitive to sounds. They really need to be mindful what they hear around them, which sounds feel comfortable to them, which sounds feel uncomfortable to them. And they thrive in places where there's a lot of information exchange. So this could be the stock market, as it could be a hair salon, it could be there are so many options where there is information that is being exchanged, and that's where they thrive. It could even be social media. So the left-facing valley is called narrow valley, and that is more focused in their communication, when the right-facing is wide valley, and that has a broader form of communication. Additionally to that, the left-facing valley really wants to know where the sound is coming from. So if a left-facing valley has a bird that is chirping somewhere around them, that can drive them crazy. They can't handle it. So they really need to know, okay, the bird is there, I can observe it, it's still annoying me, but at least I know where it is. They often also prefer to wear headphones, whereas the wide valley can handle speakers better than headphones. And they can also handle it better when there's sound that is carried from further away. So a narrow valley has this reduced sense of echo, because the walls are kind of closed in more, or the space is closed in more. It's more narrow, whereas the wide valley has a longer, wider echo, and it carries further. The sixth color is shores, and that is really about transitions and boundaries. So the shores are individuals that thrive on places that are at the edge of something. So a great example for that is a shore person loving to sit on their veranda, where they can look out into the world, but they can also observe the inside of the house. So they see these two perspectives, these two viewpoints, and they can kind of merge it together wherever they're sitting, in their head or however it may be merged. But they like to see these two sides of things. Another example, so when it comes to the left and right facing, the left facing shores is natural shores. And they are drawn to natural boundaries. So what that means is that they are drawn to natural shores. So a natural shore loves watching the ocean because that is one element, and then we have the land, which is another element, and together they're creating a boundary. So a shore person, a natural shore person can see both sides. They can see the ocean, but they can also see the land. Same with the veranda example. That would be a more urbanized version of the shores, but it kind of creates the same principle. So the right facing arrow for shores is the artificial shores, so man-made or conceptual boundaries. Another example is if you are a shore person, you probably enjoy balancing things. So sports where you have to balance, for example, that could be skateboarding, that could be riding a bike, that could be kayaking, because again, you can see both sides to something. If you are an artificial shore, you may also enjoy living on the edge of a city where you can see the city's life and you can see nature as a combination of both. So these are the environments, and I hope you got something out of this. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I also wish that Celestina was here, as I always do when she's not, but she will be there again next time. So this is how you can combine all of the knowledge that you've just received for choosing your ideal environment according to your type, your strategy, therefore, your inner authority, your G center being defined or undefined, and your environment. It can be a bit vague when you're looking at these environments of how should I live in these spaces, or what does that mean for my home? If you would like to know more about this, then what we may be doing is we could create different kinds of episodes where we're really diving into the individual environments. So we take a whole episode just for kitchens and caves and markets and valleys and mountains and shores. And that way you will get to understand, okay, that's how I set up my home. That's how I set up my office. That's how I set up my altar, for example. That's how I choose my environment, where I want to live. Let us know in the comments below. It was a pleasure being here again today, and have a beautiful rest of your week. Bye.